Imagine standing on this raw, overgrown piece of land in the Norte region of Portugal. Like, the midday sun is just absolutely beating down on the scrubland.
Oh, yeah, it gets brutally hot out there.
Right, and you have exactly 21 days, a strict, uncompromising budget of 11,000 euros, and this vision that honestly sounds like a recipe for a nervous breakdown.
I mean, it really does.
You are going to transform this wild, dry patch of earth into a fully functioning, regenerative eco-retreat. And the clock is, it's already ticking.
It's the kind of high-stakes pressure cooker scenario that normally just ends in complete disaster.
Totally.
Because when people are rushing against a ticking clock with a tiny budget, the very first thing to go out the window is ecological care.
Right. You usually see people renting heavy machinery, bulldozing the topsoil, pouring cheap concrete.
Exactly. Just forcing a structure into the landscape to hit a deadline.
The typical reality TV home makeover approach. But that is the exact opposite of what we are unpacking today. So welcome to this deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
Today, we are tearing apart the blueprint for the Lusitano Retreat build sprint. We've got this massive stack of field notes, daily battle plans, agroforestry schematics, and plumbing diagrams for off-grid water systems.
It's a huge amount of data.
It really is. And our mission today is to figure out how this specific project managed to balance a frantic, low-cost construction sprint with genuine, long-term ecological regeneration.
Yeah, we're getting deep into the dirt on their perennial food systems, their chemical-free water features, and, how they design the actual guest experience.
So that people interact with these systems without even really realizing it.
Exactly. And the underlying philosophy here is what makes this blueprint so unusual. This isn't just a construction project where you hammer some wood together and call it a cabin.
Right.
They are building a localized ecosystem from absolute scratch.
And we need to figure out how upcycled supermarket pallets, incredibly specific plant combinations, zero-chlorine swimming pools, and even casual lawn games like cornhole.
Which is still so funny to me.
I know, right? How all of that fits together into one functional machine. Because reading through this, it's clear this isn't just a vacation rental.
No, it's like a Trojan horse for environmental education.
Exactly. But let's start with the sheer panic of the timeline. A 21-day build sprint. They called it a daily battle format.
Which is very accurate.
Yeah, I mean, when you only have 11,000 euros to build out an entire retreat's infrastructure, labor alone should bankrupt you in the first week. How did they actually afford the manpower to do this?
So they engineered this really clever financial offset right in the middle of the chaos. They didn't hire a traditional construction crew.
Okay.
Instead, they hosted a natural building workshop right on the site, smack in the middle of the sprint, from day 7 to day 11.
Wait, hold on. So they brought untrained people onto a live, high-stress construction site.
They did.
Doesn't the time you spend teaching them basically cancel out any free labor you might get?
You would completely think so. But they monetized the education. They brought in 8 paying attendees.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and these individuals paid around 300 euros each. Some grabbed early bird rates 280, others paid 350.
Right.
And in exchange, they got to camp on site, received 3 meals a day, and were taught hands-on natural building techniques.
Okay, so they are pulling in about, 2,400 euros in revenue while the build is actively happening.
Exactly. And they weren't having these students practice on, dummy walls that get torn down later.
They were doing the real work.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
These 8 attendees were put directly to work building the critical permanent foundations of the retreat.
That's crazy.
I mean, they poured and built the sauna foundation. They framed out the entire outdoor kitchen. By bringing in paying students who genuinely wanted to learn by doing the heavy lifting, they offset their labor costs to a degree that is almost comical.
Like, how much did it end up being?
The net labor budget for the entire 21-day sprint came down to just 435 euros.
435 euros for 3 weeks of heavy construction labor. That is staggering. It's brilliant. They essentially crowdsourced their workforce and got paid to teach them. But, hacking the labor force only solves half the problem.
Yeah.
Lumber is incredibly expensive.
Oh, yeah, lumber will eat your whole budget.
And this brings us to what they call the pallet economy of Norte Portugal.
This part is a masterclass in exploiting local waste streams. Because if you're building on a shoestring, you can't go to a lumber yard and buy premium cedar.
Right, definitely not.
So Euro pallets became the absolute backbone of their low-cost architecture. They mapped out local supermarket logistics warehouses, like these massive distribution hubs for grocery chains like Pingo Doce and Continente.
Yeah, I read that part of the plan. You literally just drive up to the loading dock and ask, 10 pallets para offer free, sir.
Right. Do you have pallets to give away?
Do you have pallets to give away? They also hit up industrial zones near Braga with this hard goal to stockpile 80 to 100 pallets before day 6. But I have a question about the safety of this.
Yeah.
Aren't industrial pallets usually soaked in toxic chemicals to prevent rot? I mean, you wouldn't want to build a kitchen out of that.
That is a crucial distinction. You have to read the stamps on the wood.
Okay.
You are looking for the HT stamp, which stands for heat treated. Those pallets are baked in a kiln to kill pests, which makes them perfectly safe for human contact and gardening.
Oh, got it. So they're not chemically treated.
Right. You absolutely must avoid anything stamped MB, which means it was fumigated with methyl bromide, which is a highly toxic pesticide.
Okay, yeah, definitely don't want that near your food.
Exactly. They strictly sourced HT pallets. And what they engineered with them goes far beyond just, like, stacking them up. They designed 15 distinct upcycling modules.
Let's break down a few of those modules because the efficiency is just wild. Take Module 1, the pallet tool wall.
Oh, that's a great one.
They took 8 heat-treated pallets, 50 heavy-duty hooks, and some scrap copper wire scavenged from an electrician.
Talk about upcycling.
Right. And they stood the pallets vertically, wired them tightly together for stability, and built this massive organized storage wall for 30 hand tools right at the entrance of the worksite.
I mean, it creates immediate visual order on a chaotic site.
Yeah.
And the geometry of a Euro pallet is incredibly versatile.
How so?
Well, if you lay one down horizontally, sand down the rough splinters, and seal it, you suddenly have 1.2 square meters of durable decking.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and if you stand 2 upright side by side and bind them, you've got a rigid 2 square meter vertical privacy screen.
That's so smart.
If you invert one, reinforce the slats, sand it smooth, and hit it with 3 coats of marine-grade boat varnish, you have a weatherproof kitchen worktop.
They took 4 pallets, wired the corners together to form a box, and instantly created a 1.2 cubic meter compost bin. They built the entire skeletal infrastructure of this retreat out of grocery store trash.
It's incredible. But, pallets don't hold themselves together. You still need hardware.
Right, which explains the massive €800 shopping trip on day 1.
The Leroy Merlin haul.
Yeah.
Leroy Merlin is a massive European hardware chain, kind of similar to Home Depot. Dropping €800 on day 1 sounds like a huge hit to an €11,000 budget.
It really does.
But you have to look at what they were buying. It wasn't luxury finishing materials. It was the connective tissue.
Right, like galvanized screws that won't rust in the morning dew, heavy-duty hinges for the outdoor kitchen doors.
Exactly.
Drill bits, sanding pads, thick gauge binding wire, heavy EPDM rubber scraps, and this €20 can of chalkboard paint.
And that chalkboard paint is actually the key to understanding the psychology of the entire sprint.
Yes, I wanted to get into this.
Because this wasn't just 2 guys quietly hammering in the woods. They were filming this. They were live streaming the struggle.
Listening to how they structured their days, I mean, it honestly sounds like a video game.
It really does.
You know when you are playing a first-person shooter or role-playing game and you have that heads-up display, the HUD?
Oh, yeah, with your health and everything.
Yeah, right. You've got your health bar, your active mission objectives flashing, and your daily score. They literally built a physical HUD in the real world.
The progress wall. It's brilliant. They took a massive sheet of reclaimed plywood, painted it with that chalkboard paint, and mounted it vertically right between the caravan and the outdoor kitchen.
So everyone could see it.
Exactly. They specifically placed it there so the aerial drone cameras could constantly see it from the sky.
Yeah.
Every single day, they publicly scored themselves out of 60 points across 6 different task categories.
And it was ruthless. Like a perfect 10 out of 10 in a category meant they completed the main mission, every single subtask, and a bonus stretch goal.
Yeah, and if they failed, they got a 0.
On a typical back-breaking day, their target was to hit a score of 52 to 58 out of 60. This wasn't just, a private to-do list in a notebook.
No, it was a highly visible public accountability engine broadcast to the whole internet.
Accountability is the right word. I mean, when you are doing physical labor for 21 days straight in the Mediterranean sun, your body just wants to quit around day 14.
Absolutely. By gamifying the progress and broadcasting it, they basically manufactured external pressure to keep moving.
Right.
But they went further than just showing a scoreboard. They actually handed control of the project over to the audience.
The daily polls. This blew my mind from a business perspective.
It's so smart.
24 hours before a video was scheduled to drop, they would post a poll on YouTube asking the viewers to make a binding decision on the physical build.
Yeah, something like day 2 decision. Do we pour the east wall foundation or do we dig the water trench first?
And the financial impact of that simple mechanic is staggering. Just by asking the audience what to do next, they saw a 96% lift in their daily revenue from the channel.
A 96% lift.
Right. Why does that work so well?
Because it transforms a passive consumer of content into an active stakeholder.
Ah, that makes sense.
If you vote for the water trench, you're going to tune in the next day and watch the entire video, just to see if your choice won and how it turned out.
And that increased watch time boosts the algorithm.
Which boosts ad revenue, which directly funds the concrete they are pouring. It is an incredibly tight feedback loop.
And they anchored that engagement emotionally with the Carta.
Oh, the card is fantastic. On day 1, they opened a completely public Google document.
Just open to anyone.
Yep. Any viewer, anywhere in the world could log in and write exactly 1 sentence. Every evening, during their live recap of the day's physical exhaustion, they would sit down and read 3 sentences from that document.
That's such a cool community builder.
And then on day 21, the final collective letter was printed out, professionally framed, and hung inside the finished guest caravan.
To think about the emotional weight of that object. The very first paying guest who arrives at this remote retreat in Portugal walks into their room and reads a welcome letter authored by thousands of random people from 45 different countries.
People who virtually built the space the guest is sleeping in.
It completely shatters the normal, sterile hotel experience.
It really does. They also baked in digital Easter eggs.
Oh, right. What was that about?
So they hid symbols or specific words in every daily video, and the first viewer to compile all 21 won a free stay as a founding guest.
Wow, that's a serious prize.
Yeah. They even buried a time capsule on day 1. It had a €1 coin, a handwritten letter about their fears for the project, the actual printed build plan, and a list of the names of everyone who commented on the very first episode.
And they dug it up at the end, right?
Yeah, they buried it on day 1 and then dug it out of the dirt and opened it live on camera on day 21.
It's an impeccable narrative structure. When you are in the weeds of construction, everything feels endless. Burying and digging up a capsule creates a definitive psychological beginning and end to the chaos.
It frames the whole sprint perfectly.
But I have to push back on this whole concept. We are talking about building a regenerative, peaceful eco-retreat, a place where people go to disconnect and heal. But the engine building it is fueled by YouTube algorithms, daily stress scores out of 60, public polls, and burying time capsules for engagement.
It sounds incredibly frantic.
It really does. How can you possibly lay the groundwork for a serene, natural ecosystem when you are sprinting to appease the internet?
It is a profound contradiction. The tension between the hyperspeed of internet culture and the glacial pace of ecological restoration is massive.
Yes, exactly.
But this blueprint resolves that tension by separating the project into 2 distinct layers, the hardware and the software.
Hardware and software. Okay, break that down for me.
The frantic 21-day sprint is strictly about installing the hardware. The pallet tool walls, the caravan placement, the outdoor kitchen roof, the gravel paths.
The physical stuff.
Right. You can force hardware into existence quickly with enough sweat and caffeine. But the software is the ecology, the soil biology, the root systems, the canopy growth.
You can't speed that up.
You absolutely cannot rush software. The entire purpose of the chaotic 21-day hardware sprint is to generate a massive burst of short-term energy and cash, which basically buys them the long-term freedom to let the software run at its own speed.
So the sprint essentially funds the serenity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Construction loans and mortgages are what force property owners to make terrible ecological decisions.
Oh, that's true.
If you owe a bank 10,000 euros a month, you are going to spray chemical fertilizers to make your landscaping look green instantly, and you are going to pave over wetlands to pack in more paying guests immediately. You can't afford to wait for a forest to grow.
But by crowdsourcing this, by selling 10 founding guest pre-sale spots for 150 euros on day 10 and selling 50 supporter stones for 30 euros each, where a viewer gets their name engraved on a granite rock lining the pathway.
They pull in cash simultaneously with the build.
Right. By day 21, the physical infrastructure is entirely paid for. There is no looming bank loan.
And that financial liberation is what allows them to step back, take a breath, and let a perennial food system establish itself organically over the next decade.
That transition is fascinating. The internet literally bought them the time that nature requires to heal. But let's look at that software.
Yeah, let's get into the dirt.
Because building a kitchen out of pallets in 3 weeks is one thing, but engineering a biological system that will feed people for a century is a totally different skill set. How are they approaching the soil?
They are using a framework called Syntropic agroforestry, specifically adapted for the Mediterranean climate of Portugal.
If you're picturing a standard vegetable garden right now, some neat flat rows of tomatoes and bare dirt, we need to completely adjust that image.
Oh, definitely.
Portugal in the summer is brutal. It is scorching hot, incredibly dry, and then the winters bring torrential, heavy rains. What exactly is a syntropic garden, and how does it survive that climate?
At its core, syntropic farming is a deliberate attempt to mimic the architecture and biological functions of a natural forest. In conventional industrial agriculture, the first step is to clear-cut the land, plow the soil to expose it, and plant a monoculture, say, thousands of identical rows of corn.
Which is pretty standard.
But that is an entirely artificial state. Nature despises bare dirt. Bare dirt gets sterilized by the sun and washes away in the rain.
Nature always wants to cover itself up. It wants to be a forest.
Precisely. Conventional farming fights nature's desire to become a forest, which is why it requires endless, massive inputs of synthetic fertilizer, herbicides, and irrigation.
It's an uphill battle.
Exactly. Syntropic farming, on the other hand, works with the concept of ecological succession. You design a system that starts out yielding fast-growing crops in the first few years, but is intentionally designed to evolve into a dense, self-sustaining food forest over time.
And the geometry of how they plant this is highly specific. The blueprints show all the planting rows oriented strictly north-south. I assume that's a solar play.
Yes, it is entirely about managing solar energy. As the sun tracks from east to west across the sky throughout the day, a north-south row ensures that both the morning sun hits the eastern face of the tree canopy and the afternoon sun hits the western face.
So even distribution.
Right. If you planted east-west, the northern side of the trees would be permanently cast in shadow by their own canopy, leading to stunted, lopsided growth and poor fruit yields.
That makes perfect sense. And they don't just dig a hole in the flat earth either. The manual details these very specific planting mounds.
On the mounds.
Yeah, they build round mounds of soil that are exactly 1.2 meters in diameter and raised at least 50 centimeters off the original ground level. Why go through the exhausting labor of building thousands of mounds?
This borrows heavily from the Miyawaki method of rapid forest restoration.
Which is what, exactly?
Well, when you're dealing with degraded scrubland, the native soil is often heavily compacted. Plant roots have to spend massive amounts of energy just trying to pierce the hard pan.
It's like digging through concrete.
Exactly. By piling up 50 centimeters of loose, uncompacted soil, heavily mixed with organic matter and compost, you are giving the young, fragile roots an effortless environment to explode into.
So they grow way faster.
They establish themselves months, if not years, faster than they would in flat, compacted ground.
And I was thinking about the height of those mounds, too. If you raise the planting area 50 centimeters, I imagine a wild rabbit or a rodent isn't going to want to scale a steep pile of loose dirt and expose its underbelly to predators just to nibble on a sapling.
It is a brilliant passive defense mechanism against predation. Rabbits prefer to graze on a flat plain where they can bolt quickly.
Right, they want a quick escape route.
An elevated, unstable mound deters them naturally without needing miles of expensive chicken wire. And the 1.2-meter diameter is purely ergonomic.
Ergonomic for the humans.
Yeah. A human arm can easily reach about 60 centimeters. By keeping the mound 1.2 meters wide, you can reach the absolute dead center of the planting area from any side without ever having to step onto the mound itself.
Which means you never compress the soil with your boots. You protect the delicate fungal networks, the mycelium growing underneath.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have these perfectly engineered, rabbit-proof dirt mounds. What actually goes into them? This is where the blueprint introduces the concept of the guild.
A plant guild is the fundamental building block of a food forest. Instead of planting a lone apple tree in a field of grass, you plant a tight, highly diverse cluster of different species.
Trees, shrubs, herbs, vines, ground covers.
Right, all specifically chosen because they mutually support and protect the central fruit tree.
I love this concept. I look at a plant guild like a highly functional heist crew in a movie.
That's a fun way to think about it.
You know the trope? You've got the mastermind, the muscle, the hacker, the getaway driver. Everyone has a highly specific job, and if one person gets taken out, the entire operation collapses.
That is an incredibly accurate way to look at it, actually. Let's map your heist crew analogy onto the specific peach tree guild that they detail in their planting schematics.
Let's do it. So in this mound, the peach tree is obviously the mastermind. It's the star of the show.
Definitely.
It's the one that eventually pulls off the big score, the massive yield of fresh fruit. But the peach tree is a bit of a prima donna. It takes years to produce, it needs massive amounts of food, and it can't really protect itself from bugs. It needs a crew. First, it needs the muscle.
The muscle of this guild is a plant called the Siberian pea shrub. This is what we call a nitrogen-fixing plant.
Okay, how does that work?
Well, a peach tree desperately needs nitrogen to grow green leaves, but it can't pull nitrogen out of the ambient air. The Siberian pea shrub can. It has this symbiotic relationship with rhizobia bacteria in its root nodules.
Right.
It pulls atmospheric nitrogen down into the soil, converts it into a usable form, and effectively pumps it into the ground where the peach tree's roots can access it. The shrub is literally feeding the mastermind.
Okay, so the mastermind is fed. Next, you need the crowd control. The crew members who keep the crops, or in this case, the invasive weeds, away from the operation.
That role goes to a dense understory planting of clover and comfrey. These plants act as a living green mulch.
They just cover the ground.
Yeah, they grow thick and low to the ground, aggressively shading out any competitive weed seeds that try to germinate. But comfrey does double duty.
Oh, what else does it do?
It is a dynamic accumulator. It sends a massive, thick taproot deep into the subsoil, far deeper than the peach tree's roots, and mines essential minerals like potassium and calcium from deep in the earth.
Wow, so it brings it all up to the top.
Exactly. It pulls those minerals up into its broad leaves. When those leaves naturally die back and rot on the surface, they deliver those deep earth minerals directly to the topsoil.
Then you need the bait, the distraction to handle security.
The sunflowers and calendula, these are insectary plants. A peach tree requires pollination to produce fruit, so you need to bring bees to the yard.
And giant sunflowers will definitely do that.
The bright, massive blooms act as a neon sign for pollinators. But calendula also attracts predatory insects, like parasitic wasps and hoverflies.
Why do you want wasps in your garden?
Because when aphids show up trying to suck the sap out of your fragile peach tree, the parasitic wasps that the calendula brought in will hunt down and decimate the aphid population. It is pure biological pest control.
It's a self-defending system. That is brilliant. And finally, you need the quick cash. The mastermind might take 3 years to yield a peach. You need something to fund the operation right now, to feed the humans managing the site.
Exactly. So they tuck cabbage right into the edges of the mound. It's a fast-growing annual vegetable.
Nice and quick?
Right. It provides an immediate, heavy yield of food within months, taking advantage of the sunlight and nutrients in the mound before the peach tree canopy grows large enough to shade it out.
It is a flawlessly designed biological machine. And while the peach tree provides food for the guests, the blueprints emphasize that the long-term, 100-year canopy of this site relies on native Mediterranean trees.
You really have to plan for the long game.
Right. Species that have evolved to survive the punishing Portuguese summers.
Yes, you cannot fight the climate you are in. They are heavily planting the cork oak, Quercus suber, which is a culturally and ecologically vital tree in Portugal.
It's famous for its bark, right?
Yeah, it's known for its incredible fire resistance and ability to regenerate its bark after it's harvested. They're also planting holm oak, carob trees, and the strawberry tree, Arbutus unido, which produces an edible red fruit and actually thrives in poor, rocky soils.
But those native oaks grow incredibly slowly. I mean, an oak might take decades to cast a meaningful shadow. How do they protect the soil while they wait for the oaks to grow?
That's where pioneer plants come in.
The sources talk about pioneer plants specifically focusing on a shrub called tagacest, or tree lucerne, and an acacia species, Acacia longifolia.
Tagaceste is the absolute workhorse of Mediterranean syntropic systems. It is an incredibly aggressive, fast-growing, drought-tolerant nitrogen fixer.
Okay.
But in a syntropic system, you don't just plant it and let it grow into a pretty bush. You use it as an engine. You manage it aggressively with a technique called chop and drop.
Chop and drop. I was reading this part and it feels so counterintuitive. You spend all this time planting and watering a tree just to take a machete and hack it to pieces.
It seems violent, for sure, but it is the biological engine of the soil. When the tagaceste grows a thick canopy of branches, you literally chop them off and drop them directly onto the ground around your target fruit trees.
What does that actually achieve biologically? I mean, besides making a mess.
2 things happen simultaneously. Above ground, All those branches and leaves create a massive thick layer of brown mulch.
Okay, so it covers the soil.
Right. This carbon-rich blanket shields the soil from the baking sun, trapping moisture in the ground, and it feeds the earthworms and soil fungi as it breaks down.
In below ground.
Below ground is where the magic happens. A plant seeks equilibrium between its root mass and its leaf mass.
Okay.
When you suddenly violently chop off 50% of the CHCESH's canopy, the plant panics. It realizes it no longer has enough solar panels leaves to support its massive underground root system.
So what does it do?
So it intentionally lets a huge portion of its roots die back. As those dead roots decompose in the soil, they release a massive concentrated pulse of nitrogen and organic matter directly into the earth, right next to the roots of the fruit trees.
Wow.
It's basically an underground, slow-release fertilizer bomb.
So you are forcing the plant to pump nutrients into the soil on command, and you can do this multiple times a year.
Exactly.
This explains why syntropic systems outproduce conventional farming. It's a geometric advantage. You are farming in 3D, not 2D.
Exactly. A conventional wheat field is a 2D plane. It has one layer of leaves capturing sunlight. A food forest stacks yields vertically.
Right, you've got all the different heights.
You have the tall canopy oaks, the subcanopy fruit trees, the tall shrub tagasaste, the herbaceous comfrey, the ground-covered clover, the underground root crops, and climbing vines twisting up the trunks.
So much density.
You have a leaf at every conceivable height,
Yeah.
capturing exponentially more solar energy per square meter than a flat field ever could.
It sounds like an absolute paradise. But we have to talk about the elephant in the room for the Iberian Peninsula, wildfires.
Yeah, that is a huge issue.
Every summer, the news is filled with catastrophic, devastating wildfires sweeping across Portugal. If you are deliberately building a dense, multi-layered forest retreat filled with dried wood mulch, aren't you just building a giant, highly combustible bonfire waiting for a single spark?
It is the single greatest existential threat to the project, hands down. And they tackle it through architectural landscaping, specifically in what they designate as the home zone.
Which is the area around the sleeping caravans and the outdoor kitchens, right?
Exactly. The typical approach to fire safety is just to clear-cut everything, pave it over, lay down gravel, make it totally sterile. But they didn't do that. They used the plants themselves as a defense mechanism.
Wait, they planted things to stop fires?
They engineered a living firebreak. It all comes down to the chemical composition of the leaves. Many con-Mediterranean plants, like certain pines and especially eucalyptus, are packed with highly volatile resins and oils.
Right, they go up like a match.
When a wildfire approaches, the ambient heat literally boils the oil inside the eucalyptus leaves until they explode into flames before the fire even touches them.
So what do you plant instead to stop a fire?
You plant species with naturally high moisture content and low resin. The blueprints rely heavily on cistus, commonly known as rock rose, and phlomis. These are tough, native Mediterranean shrubs that produce beautiful flowers, but their cellular structure holds onto water tenaciously. They don't carry fire well at all. They tend to smolder and actually block radiant heat.
They also heavily utilize fleshy herbaceous perennials, right? Things like agapanthus, rosemary, sage, and aloes.
Yes, those are perfect.
These plants have thick, leathery, or succulent leaves filled with water. If a spark lands on an agapanthus leaf, it just sizzles out.
Exactly.
By planting these tightly in concentric rings around the wooden structures, they create a green buffer, a hydrated wall of vegetation that actively resists ignition and drops the temperature of an advancing fire line.
It's landscaping as armor.
Okay, so you have this incredibly intricate 3D architecture of plants. You've got the heist crews trading nutrients, you've got root systems dying back to pump nitrogen, and you've got this fleshy, moisture-rich wall of fire-resistant succulents guarding the perimeter.
It's a lot of systems running at once.
But Portugal in August is absolutely ruthless. The sun will bake this soil to ceramic if there isn't a massive self-sustaining hydration system beneath it. You can't just stand out there with a plastic watering can all day.
Oh, absolutely not.
How are they trapping enough water on a dry slope to keep a forest alive off-grid?
This is where we move into the hydrology of the retreat. Before they plant a single seed, they have to completely re-engineer the way water moves across the land. And their primary tool for this is the swale.
The schematics show them digging swales on contour. Break down the physics of a swale for me.
Imagine the side of a sloping hill. When a heavy winter rainstorm hits, the water hits the compacted soil and immediately accelerates down the slope.
Like a slip and slide.
Yeah, and as it gains speed, it strips away the precious topsoil, causing severe erosion, and the water eventually just runs off the property entirely into a river or a road. The land stays thirsty.
Right.
A swale is a wide, shallow ditch dug exactly along the natural elevation contour line of the hill. It is perfectly mathematically level from end to end.
So when the sheet of rainwater rushes down the hill, it hits this ditch. Because the ditch is perfectly level, the water doesn't flow to the left or the right, it just stops.
Exactly. The core mantra of permaculture hydrology is slow it, spread it, sink it. The swale violently slows the water's momentum. It spreads the water out evenly across the entire length of the contour line. And then it just sits there, slowly sinking deep into the subsoil, naturally recharging the underground aquifer.
And what happens to the dirt they dug out to make the ditch? They don't just cart it away, right?
No, they pile the excavated earth on the immediate downhill side of the ditch to form a long mound, which is called a berm. And they immediately plant that berm with their target fruit trees.
Ah, so the trees are right next to the water source.
Exactly. As the trees grow, their deep root systems act like rebar, anchoring the soil of the berm so it doesn't wash away.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, those roots are perfectly positioned to reach back under the swale and drink deeply from the massive lens of water trapped in the soil.
It is a completely passive, gravity-fed, self-watering system.
It's incredibly efficient once you set it up.
That handles the macro landscape, the rain. But what about the micro water system?
The human element.
Right, the water the humans are using. When you have guests paying to stay, they are going to take showers. They're going to wash their hands and do dishes in the outdoor kitchen. In a normal hotel, that water goes into a municipal sewer and is chemically treated miles away. How do you handle gray water entirely off-grid without creating a toxic swamp?
You capture every single drop and put it to work. Gray water is relatively clean wastewater. It's from showers and sinks, not toilets.
But it still has stuff in it.
Yeah, it contains soap, skin cells, hair, and maybe some food grease. You can't just dump that raw onto the roots of a peach tree. They designed a biological filtration system right into the landscape.
The blueprints describe running the shower drains into a pit filled with gravel and wood chips. How does a pile of wood chips filter soapy water? Isn't the soap going to kill the plants?
It completely depends on the soap. The retreat enforces a strict rule. Only specific biodegradable plant-based soaps are allowed on site.
Okay, so no harsh chemicals.
Right. These soaps are usually made from natural saponins or oils. When the gray water hits the wood chip pit, the physical wood chips trap the solid matter, the hair, and the skin cells. But more importantly, the wood chips are carbon.
Meaning what?
They become a massive breeding ground for fungi and soil bacteria.
Wait, so the microbes eat the soap?
Exactly. The microbes view the carbon-based biodegradable soap as an all-you-can-eat buffet. They break down the chemical bonds of the soap, consuming it entirely.
That's wild.
By the time the water trickles through the bottom of the wood chip pit and enters the French drain, which is a perforated pipe buried in gravel, the water is biologically cleansed.
And where does it go from there?
The French drain uses capillary action to slowly wick that clean, nutrient-rich water directly into the root zones of the ornamental gardens.
It's brilliant. You take a shower, and you are literally watering the firebreak plants without even thinking about it.
Total integration.
But we have to talk about the absolute crown jewel of their water system. The feature that, frankly, probably justifies their nightly glamping rate more than anything else.
A natural swimming pond.
Yes. A natural swimming pond is one of the most complex, beautiful pieces of ecological engineering you can build. It offers the luxury and visual appeal of a high-end resort pool, but without a single drop of toxic chlorine.
While simultaneously acting as a massive sanctuary for local wildlife.
Okay, I need to understand the exact science here, because if I just dig a hole in my backyard and fill it with water, within 2 weeks, I have a murky, green, foul-smelling swamp.
Absolutely, you just have a mess.
How do you build a pool that keeps itself crystal clear using only rocks and plants?
The foundational rule of natural pool construction, which they adhere to strictly in these schematics, is the 50-50 split.
Right, you literally divide the pool in half.
Exactly. You excavate a massive basin. Exactly half of the total volume and surface area is designated as the deep swim zone.
Where people actually swim.
Right. This is usually 4 to 8 feet depth, with sheer walls, completely free of any rocks or plants, just clear water for human swimming. The other half is the shallow regeneration zone.
And how are they separated?
You build a submerged retaining wall right down the middle, stopping just an inch or two below the final water line, completely separating the humans from the biology.
But first you have to make sure the water doesn't just seep into the earth, right?
Correct. The entire massive basin is lined and waterproofed. Depending on the budget and the local soil, You use either a heavy-duty EPDM rubber liner, which is synthetic, stretches without tearing, and is highly UV resistant, or you use bentonite clay.
What's bentonite clay?
Bentonite is a volcanic ash clay that expands dramatically when it gets wet, creating a completely impermeable, natural seal against the earth.
Once it's sealed, you build the filter in the shallow half. The regeneration zone is essentially filled with tons of specific graded gravel and river rock. And then you plant it aggressively with aquatic species like water lilies, reeds, and irises. But I want to drill down into the biology. How does a water lily keep the deep end clear?
It's all about managing the nitrogen cycle and starving the enemy. The enemy of clear water is single-celled algae.
Which turns the water green.
Exactly. Algae needs two things to explode: sunlight and nutrients, specifically ammonia and nitrates.
And human swimmers introduce massive amounts of nutrients. Sweat, dead skin cells, sunscreen, natural oil.
Yes. So the pool uses a highly efficient, low-power, nearly silent circulation pump. This pump slowly and constantly pulls water from the bottom of the deep swim zone and pushes it up into the bottom of the shallow regeneration zone.
Okay, so it's constantly moving.
The water is forced to percolate slowly up through the massive beds of gravel.
And the gravel is the actual filter, not because it traps dirt, but because of what lives on it.
Exactly. The surface area of millions of pieces of gravel provides a home for massive colonies of beneficial nitrifying bacteria. As the human waste and environmental debris wash over the rocks, these bacteria consume the ammonia and convert it into nitrites and then into nitrates.
They're digesting all the gross stuff.
They break down the toxic sludge into basic bioavailable fertilizer.
And that's where the plants step in.
Precisely. As the water reaches the root systems of the water lilies and the reeds, these massive aquatic plants aggressively suck up all those nitrates to fuel their own growth. They are incredibly hungry plants.
So they just eat it all.
They essentially strip the water entirely bare of any available nutrients.
So by the time the water flows over the submerged dividing wall and cascades back into the deep swim zone, it is chemically pure.
Yep.
The algae literally starves to death because the reeds ate all their food.
It is a closed-loop biological machine.
Yeah.
The result is water that looks like a high-end chemical pool, but feels completely different.
Because there's no chlorine.
Right. It is soft on the skin, it doesn't burn your eyes, it doesn't bleach your hair, and it smells like a fresh mountain lake. And it aligns perfectly with the local ecological philosophies of the region. The notes mention the influence of the Tamra water retention landscape.
Tamra is that famous, massive eco-village down in southern Portugal, right?
Yes. Tamra pioneered the concept of healing desertified landscapes by building decentralized, unsealed lakes. Their philosophy is that modern human engineering treats water as a nuisance. We try to pipe it into concrete channels and rush it out to the ocean as fast as possible.
Just get rid of it.
Right. But Tamra believes in creating bodies of water that allow the moisture to slowly diffuse into what they call the earth body. A natural swimming pond, while sealed for human swimming, creates a massive microclimate. The evaporation alone drops the ambient temperature of the surrounding retreat and hydrates the canopy of the food forest.
It is a stunning concept. But I have to ask the gross, highly practical question here.
I think I know what it is.
I'm looking at a body of still water in the baking Mediterranean summer, surrounded by thick reeds and plants. And it is placed less than 50 feet from the glamping caravans where guests are paying a premium to sleep.
Yep.
Aren't you just building a multi-thousand-euro luxury mosquito breeding factory?
It is the absolute #1 fear anyone has when they hear the words natural pond. But the answer lies in understanding the specific reproductive biology of a mosquito.
Okay, biology lesson. Let's go.
A female mosquito requires absolutely still, stagnant, glassy water to lay her egg grafts. The larvae literally breathe through tiny snorkels that stick up through the surface tension of the water. If the surface is moving, they drown.
Ah, so that low-power circulation pump isn't just feeding the bacteria.
Exactly. Because the pump is constantly pulling water from the deep end and pushing it through the gravel, there's a continuous, gentle flow over the submerged dividing wall.
The water is always rippling.
Right. It is never truly stagnant. The surface tension is constantly broken, which makes it an incredibly hostile environment for mosquito eggs.
But what about the far edges, the shallow corners of the regeneration zone where the reeds are thickest and the water might be relatively calm?
That is where the predator ecology takes over. When you build a diverse aquatic environment without chlorine, nature moves in instantly.
Who's moving in?
The lush vegetation in the shallow zone attracts a massive, standing army of natural predators. We are talking about thousands of water striders skating on the surface, diving beetles, local frogs, and the ultimate apex aerial predator of the insect world, the dragonfly.
Dragonflies are ruthless.
They are voracious. Both the adult dragonflies patrolling the air and their aquatic nymphs living in the submerged plant roots consume massive quantities of mosquito larvae. A natural pool creates a habitat where the predators exponentially outnumber and outhunt the pests.
That is so cool.
You don't manage mosquitoes by pouring poison into the water. You manage them by inviting their natural enemies to move in permanently. It is an ecosystem actively regulating itself.
Okay, the sheer complexity of what we've covered is staggering. Let's zoom out for a second. We have a fire-resistant syntropic food forest planted in anti-compaction mounds fueled by root dieback nitrogen bombs.
Yeah.
We have rainwater trapped in gravity-fed swales. We have showers filtered by carbon-hungry microbes and wood chips. And we have a crystal-clear, chemical-free swimming pond guarded by an army of dragonflies.
It sounds like a sci-fi novel.
It really does.
Yeah.
The ecological stage is absolutely flawless, but this isn't a private research facility. This is a business. Paying guests are arriving. And honestly, people aren't paying 200 euros a night just to stare at the nodules on a Siberian pea shrub.
Right, they want a vacation.
They want to relax.
Right.
How do you design the human layer of this ecosystem?
That brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. The architecture of glamping, play, and human connection. The schematics are just as obsessed with the psychological flow of the guests as they are with the water flow of the swales.
Let's look at the physical pathways first. The blueprint is very strict about where people are allowed to walk.
You have to guide human behavior invisibly. If you just let people wander, they will compact the soil and crush the delicate syntropic mounds.
Which ruins everything we just talked about.
Exactly.
Well,
so they define very clear, obvious walking routes. The pathways are carved out at 3 to 4 feet wide enough for 2 people to walk shoulder to shoulder, and they were laid thick with contrasting gravel or wood mulch so they visually pop against the green landscape.
And they illuminate them heavily at night. The budget includes dozens of cheap, wiring-free solar stake lights. I assume that's a liability issue. You don't want a guest twisting their ankle in a swale at midnight.
It's safety, yes, but it also creates psychological comfort. A dark forest is intimidating to a city dweller. A softly lit, defined path feels like a sanctuary.
That makes a lot of sense.
And they're equally deliberate about the acoustic zoning of the property.
Acoustic zoning, I noticed that. The parking lot is kept strictly on the extreme outer perimeter of the property. They force you to park your car and walk into the retreat.
You have to physically leave the mechanical world behind. You don't want the noise of a diesel engine, the smell of exhaust, or the glare of headlights sweeping across a glamping tent while someone is trying to sleep.
Obviously.
But more importantly, they zone the internal activity areas based on how sound travels.
Right. They place the communal fire pits, the yoga platforms, the outdoor communal kitchens, and the lawn games in specific acoustic pockets. They map the prevailing winds and the topography so that the sound of a dozen people laughing around a fire pit at 11 p.m. carries away from the sleeping caravans, not toward them.
Yeah, you can have a loud, vibrant party in one zone and absolute dead silence in the sleeping zone 50 yards away.
Let's talk about those games. This is the part of the blueprint that honestly made me laugh out loud when I first read it.
The World Games corners.
Yes. The design specifically details carving out flat areas for World Games corners. And they explicitly mention setting up a permanent cornhole area and a bocce-ball court.
It's amazing.
Cornhole. You have this profound, ecologically transcendent permaculture retreat. And you drop a beanbag tossing game right in the middle of it. It feels a bit like putting a neon plastic mini golf windmill in the middle of Yosemite National Park.
Oh.
Why deliberately include lawn games?
I understand the instinct to find it tacky, I really do. But it is actually a brilliant piece of psychological engineering by the designers. True regeneration isn't just about repairing the topsoil or balancing the nitrogen cycle. It is about repairing human connection.
Okay, that's profound.
Permaculture involves the human element, and modern humans are terribly isolated.
Okay, walk me through the psychology of cornhole.
Think about the architecture of a traditional luxury resort or a high-end hotel. The entire design is based on isolation and exclusivity. You have your private room behind a locked door. You have your private isolated table at the restaurant. You might have your private lounger by the pool.
Everyone is separated.
The unspoken social contract of a hotel is that you aggressively ignore every other guest. You put your noise-canceling headphones on and pretend you are alone.
That's true. If a stranger approaches you at a resort pool, your first instinct is usually, what does this person want from me?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But an eco-retreat thrives on a completely different frequency. It relies on communal energy. However, you can't just force a bunch of strangers from different countries into an outdoor kitchen and expect them to magically bond.
Be too awkward.
They need a social lubricant. Simple, low-stakes, universally understood physical games like tossing a beanbag or rolling a bosch ball are the ultimate icebreakers.
Because it's a shared physical reality, it's incredibly hard to maintain a stiff, guarded corporate posture when you are cheering over a piece of canvas sliding into a hole on a plywood board.
It instantly dissolves social hierarchy and anxiety. You combine these low-stakes play zones with the communal outdoor kitchen, where people are bumping elbows, making coffee in the morning, and the central fire pit.
And side note, the safety schematics mandate a strict 15-foot clearance of bare earth or stone around that fire pit to prevent stray embers from igniting the landscape.
Very important safety detail. But functionally, a fire pit is the oldest human gathering mechanism in existence. When you funnel guests through the outdoor kitchen, into a game of bosch, and then into chairs around a fire, you create magnetic zones of forced, joyful interaction.
Guests who arrived on Friday as completely stressed out, isolated strangers end up sharing a bottle of wine, playing a game together, and talking late into the night around the fire.
Which brings us to the ultimate synthesis of this entire project: the convergence of the frantic 21-day digital sprint and the slow, analog reality of the guest experience.
Right. I asked earlier how the chaos of the YouTube polls and the daily stress scores actually enhanced the peace of the final retreat. And it all comes down to the emotional resonance of the physical space.
Imagine being that guest.
Yeah, you just finished a game of cornhole with some new friends. You walk back toward your caravan. You step onto the pathway, softly lit by the solar stakes, and you look down and you notice the supporter stones lining the gravel.
Such a great touch.
Dozens of heavy granite rocks, each deeply engraved with a different name. Someone from Tokyo, someone from Chicago, someone from Berlin. People who voluntarily donated 30 euros during a live stream months ago just so the pathway you are walking on could exist.
It completely reframes your presence on the land.
You open the door to your caravan, and the first thing you see hanging on the wooden wall is the Carta, a beautifully framed document containing sentences written by hundreds of anonymous strangers on the internet, collectively welcoming you to this specific room. The physical environment is absolutely saturated with human intention.
You aren't just renting a bed in a pretty forest. You realize you are sleeping inside a crowd-funded story. Every single object you interact with has a history. The kitchen counter you made your coffee on isn't just wood. It's an upcycled grocery store pallet that someone sanded down on day 4 while 10,000 people watched live.
It's incredible.
The peach tree outside your window isn't just landscaping. Its placement was voted on by a community. You are an active participant in a global, collective narrative of regeneration.
And that is where the true power of this retreat lies. The designers used leisure as a Trojan horse for ecological education.
That is the perfect way to phrase it. A Trojan horse. Because the vast majority of guests are not going to book a stay because they want to learn about the nitrogen-fixing properties of rhizobia bacteria.
Definitely not.
They book a stay because they saw a gorgeous aesthetic photo of a glamping tent and a crystal-clear pool on Instagram. They just want to drink wine and relax.
But once they are inside the gates, the education happens through osmosis.
Exactly. The systems are silent teachers. A guest might be playing cornhole, but they look over and notice the incredibly thick layer of brown mulch around the fruit trees, and they see how lush the canopy is compared to the dry scrubland outside the fence.
They notice the companion planting.
When they need to use the restroom, they use a waterless composting toilet, and they experience firsthand that it doesn't smell, and they realize their own biological waste is being safely cycled back into the earth to build soil, rather than being flushed away with precious drinking water.
When they take a swim, they dive into water that is softer and clearer than any municipal pool they've ever been in. And they realize it is being cleaned entirely by the root systems of the reeds they're looking at, and protected by the dragonflies buzzing overhead.
They interact with these profound ecological systems effortlessly, while in a deep state of relaxation and play. And because they experience the sheer comfort, beauty, and joy of these systems firsthand, their internal paradigm shifts.
It changes them.
They leave the retreat on Sunday with a radically altered understanding of how human beings can actually inhabit the earth. It shatters the myth that living ecologically requires suffering, deprivation, or living in a cold, dark cave.
It proves that regenerative living can be luxurious, deeply comfortable, and profoundly community-oriented.
It is the ultimate, undeniable proof of concept.
Which brings us to the end of this blueprint. Let's look at the incredible alchemy of the Lusitano Retreat.
Alchemy is exactly what it is, the transmutation of energy.
The architects of this project took the absolute most intense, high-speed, anxiety-inducing elements of modern internet culture. We are talking about the tyranny of the daily algorithm, live streams, stress metrics, 24-hour public voting polls, the pressure to produce daily content, Easter egg hunts, and the sheer noise of global comment sections.
All of it.
They harnessed all of that frantic, chaotic digital energy, and they weaponized it to fund and physically build the slowest, most ancient, most grounded biological systems imaginable.
They built perennial 3D food forests that will literally take decades to reach their full canopy potential. They dug gravity-fed water swales that mimic the slow, patient processes of geology. They built communal fire circles that echo how human beings have gathered for tens of thousands of years.
They successfully used the hyperspeed of the internet to buy the absolute patience of nature. It is a staggering operational achievement, and it leaves us with a final, provocative thought for you to mull over.
I love this part.
We started this deep dive by asking you to imagine standing on a raw, overgrown, baking piece of scrubland, armed with nothing but a radically tight budget, an ambitious vision, and exactly 21 days.
We unpacked exactly how that intense localized focus transformed a barren wasteland into a self-regulating ecosystem capable of feeding people, purifying its own water, and fostering genuine human connection.
So take a hard look around your own life. What is your scrubland? What underutilized, overgrown raw land in your own life, whether it's a stagnant career path, a disconnected neighborhood, a neglected relationship, or an actual barren backyard, could you completely transform if you stopped waiting for a massive budget and perfect conditions?
What could you build if you simply gathered your community, engineered a clever blueprint, and committed to a ruthless, highly focused 21-day sprint?
The mechanics of regeneration are universal. The blueprint is right in front of you. The only question left is, what are you going to build?